Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to our audience joining us from all over the world. And welcome to this exciting power talk on coaching for resilience. We have two eminent speakers lined up for you today and a great set of insights. But before we start, I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsors, particularly our session sponsor, Regal Coaching, for enabling this session for us. So without further ado, coaching for resilience, what is it all about? I won't steal any of the thunder from our speakers, but all of us know how COVID-19 has besieged the world with unparalleled changes. Individual organizations, economies haven't been spared of consequences. Even the gamut of pandemic-inflicted outcomes, success narratives have emerged. People coping, people growing stronger, the hallmark of resilience, really. It's not about how many times you fall down, but how many times you get back up, in the immortal words of Abraham Lincoln. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce my privilege, Dr. Srikumar Rao, who needs no introduction to most of us. He is an eminent academic who has helped thousands of entrepreneurs and executives achieve a quantum breakthrough, reach entirely new orbits of success, and rediscover joy in life and genuine, unadulterated happiness. A true doctor of happiness, if I may say so, Dr. Rao. A famous professor, featured across media, TEDx. He enables radical thinking and vision. In addition, he is an elite coach for persons seeking spiritual growth who want to leave an outsized impact on the world. He's creating a mastermind group of such persons and would welcome referrals. For those of you who are interested, please do reach out to Dr. Rao. Welcome, Dr. Rao. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much, Raj. I must say it's my pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
All right.
If I may then also take a quick minute to introduce our other eminent speaker for this evening, Aparna Kumar, IPS, DIG of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police. Not just an IPS officer, Aparna Kumar has laid a path-breaking, trailblazing route to where she is now. She has a BA, an LLB, and is currently stationed in station headquarters in Dehradun. She comes with considerable experience and achievement as one of the most successful women police officers and police officers in the IPS. Going far beyond the gender norm, she's a passionate and well-recognized adventurist, has scaled several of the highest mountain peaks across the world, from Mount Kilimanjaro, Carstens Pyramid Peak, Aconcagua, Elbrus, Vinson Massif, Mount Everest, and Mount Denali. In addition, that was not enough. She's also skied to the geographic South Pole. She holds various prestigious awards. I don't want to go through all of them, but the Vandana Malik Trophy, Lakshmi Bai Bravery Award, Yash Bharti Award, and the Tenzing Norgay National Adventure Award, Police Medal, among a few. Welcome, Aparna ji. It's a privilege to have you here with us.
Thank you very much, Raj. It's a pleasure to be on this session.
Okay. So with that brief introduction, Dr. Rao, if I might invite you to share some of your perspectives with us.
Certainly, Raj. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share what I have learned about coaching, and I'm going to share my perspective, and I hope that it will help some of you. I have a somewhat different take on coaching. Most often, coaching comes about in the following manner. Somebody or somebody's company says, this is an area where this person could use some help. Maybe how to become a better leader, maybe how to work with teams or make the teams more cohesive, maybe communicate better. So you then identify a person who you think has the skills and can communicate them, and then you meet with that person to find out if you're compatible. And if so, then you work out terms of engagement. Here's how much it would cost. This is how it would work. This is how long it would last. And at the end of that period, this is what will happen. I don't work like that. In fact, I don't even like the term coaching. I prefer the term friend philosopher, and guide. And perhaps the most famous historical example is that of Aristotle and Alexander. Alexander was a very willful child, and his father, Philip of Macedonia, didn't know how to deal with him. So he asked Aristotle, I can't handle my son. Would you please be good enough to talk to him? So Aristotle started talking to Alexander, and they worked together for about 3 years. And you can be sure that Aristotle didn't tell Alexander, here's how to be a better swordsman, or this is how you lay siege to a mountain forest, a mountain stronghold. They talked about Homer, they talked about poetry, they talked about beauty, they talked about the meaning of life. And at the end of 3 years, Alexander became the person he became, who then went on to do what he did. So when I coach someone, it is not to help that person gain a particular skill, but to help that person have an outlook and to raise that person's level of consciousness. And when you do that, whole ranges of problems immediately get solved, entire ranges of problems. I used to teach my course, Creativity and Personal Mastery, at many of the world's top business schools. And every time I did, some variation of this incident would always happen. So let me give you the example. The first time it happened, I was teaching at Columbia Business School. And one of my students came up to me and she said, you know, Professor Rao, I was in, and she mentioned a remote part of a third world country where she was a volunteer. And she said, the people had nothing. By the people had nothing, she meant that they didn't have hot and cold running water, indoor toilets, reliable electricity. And they certainly didn't have smartphones and emails and internet. And she said, but they seemed so happy. And there was almost a note of unfairness, of aggrievedness, that how could they not have all of that and they're happy and I have all of this and I feel as if I'm walking around with a boulder on my head. And that reminds me of a problem that we're all stuck in, and I'll illustrate that by means of another story. There was a man in faultless evening clothes. He was standing under a street lamp and searching, frenziedly. And a jogger ran past him, and then he circled around and came up to the man and said, hey, you seem troubled. Is something wrong? And the man said, I dropped my car keys. And the jogger said, no problem, I'll help you find them. And he started searching with that. And after a few minutes, the jogger told the man, look, we've searched this area pretty thoroughly and I can't see any car keys. Where did you drop them? And the man says, I dropped them over there. And the jogger is understandably annoyed. And he says, well, why are you searching here if you dropped them over there? And the man says, well, it's dark there and it's light here, so I thought I'd search here. Now, all of you recognize that this is, kind of a half funny story told in a somewhat mediocre fashion, but it's supposed to be a joke. But in reality, that's what all of us are doing. We are driven by a feeling that we are incomplete. We want to be happy. We want to feel fulfilled. And we do that by going out and striving to achieve goals, to achieve name, fortune, fame. And we never recognize that you cannot solve an internal problem with external action. And yet, that is what we do all the time. It's no different from dropping your keys here and searching for it there. Because one of the things that I base everything I do on is the fact that we are all really seeking the same thing. We want to be happy. We want to be free from suffering. We want to find meaning and purpose in the feeling of being radiantly alive, to have pure, unadulterated joy in our lives. And we are striving to achieve that by a myriad things that we, quote, want, unquote. So, as all of the wisdom traditions tell us, the only way you're going to have happiness, which never ends, is if you reach that state of being, which has so many names, enlightenment, self-realization, nirvana, it doesn't matter. They all talk about the same thing, which is transiting this illusory existence that we are stuck in, this veil of Maya, if you will, in going beyond. And that is the function of a coach, to help persons get there. In the process, there are all kinds of things that you have to do, because after all, you are stuck in that. And as long as you're stuck in that, you might as well have a blast doing it. So that is the fundamental underpinning of everything that I do. And my job is to help the persons I coach remember that you're going through this, you're playing within the illusion. While you're playing within the illusion, why don't you have tremendous fun doing it? And here is how you go about setting your objectives. But ultimately, what really matters is, are you getting closer to your own spiritual development? So, my view is that the only thing anybody ever does in life is work on themselves. Are you a husband, a wife? You want to be the best husband or wife you can be? But in the process of doing that, what you're really doing is you're working on yourself. Are you a parent? You want to be the best parent you can be? But in the process of trying to be the best parent you can be, you're really working on yourself. Are you a coach? Do you have clients who are powerful, who have an impact on society? You want to help them, but in the process of helping them, what you're really doing is you're working on yourself. And in that sense, being a coach is like a Swiss Army knife of tools, because not only are you working on yourself, but you're helping others work on themselves when they realize it. And in the process of their working on themselves, they could have an impact on thousands, tens of thousands of others. And that, as I mentioned, is the only thing you ever do in life. Now, coaching actually works on two different levels, and I would like you to reflect on this. On level one, which is a relatively superficial level, there is a, why don't you try this technique? Or why don't you try experimenting with this method of doing something? And then you go back and do that. And that is very important. I'm not knocking that at all. But coaching also happens at a deeper level. Have you ever been in a situation where you're in the same room with someone who was so upset, so agitated, so troubled, that just being in that person's presence put you on edge? The person didn't say anything, didn't shout, didn't, just he was who he was. But just being in that person's presence set you on edge. Virtually everybody can remember at least one such incident. And on the flip side, have you ever been in the same place as someone like the Dalai Lama, for example, or a senior monk in a monastery, and the calmness and serenity oozing from that person somehow calmed you down? Again, virtually everybody can remember at least one such instance. We are all emanating vibrations, and these are picked up on a subliminal level. Your job as a coach is to also coach at that level where your presence itself has an impact upon the person that you are coaching. And that presence makes truths which would otherwise have seemed crazy, all of a sudden, yes, this is the way things are. Now, how do I make that happen? Now, one of the things that you will recognize is that every time you coach someone, and that person in that coaching session achieves a certain presence, achieves a certain knowledge, and 10 minutes later, he's in a business meeting or something, and everything flies out of the window. That's always going to happen. So use a phrase. And this is something you use for yourself, and this is something you also get your clients to think about. Constant, gentle pressure. I came across this phrase in a book called Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. Danny Meyer is one of the famous restaurateurs in New York. He owned and operated a number of Michelin-starred restaurants. And he said, if you want to have a table that's perfectly set, you have to make sure that the salt and pepper shakers are exactly in the center of the table. And everybody conspires to move the salt and pepper shaker off the center of that table. A waiter hurrying by might bump against the table and knock the salt and pepper shakers off the center. A customer, a client might pull on one side of the tablecloth, and that moves the salt and pepper shaker out from the center. You are constant in your observation of this. That's where the constant comes in. You never let it slip your attention. In a perfect setting, the salt and pepper shaker have to be exactly at the center. You have to be gentle. If you scream at the waiter because he bumped the table, then he's going to get angry and might become passive aggressive and create a whole host of other problems. You don't want that, so you're gentle. But at the same time, the salt and pepper shaker are off the center, and you want them back in the center, so you put them back in the center. That's the pressure. So remember that. It's like a mantra for your coaching practice, and what you want to inculcate in your coaches: constant, gentle pressure. That is what you're going to be using all the time. It is the job of the universe to move the salt and pepper shakers off from the center, and it's your job to put them back. You're not going to get angry. You're not going to get frazzled. You're just going to exert constant, gentle pressure. And that is your function with the persons that you're coaching, because they're going to forget. They're going to relapse to their old ways of thinking. And every time you have a session with them, you will reassure them both by what you say and by your presence, and you will apply constant, gentle pressure. And if you do that and you have a client who is also dedicated, sooner or later they will absorb that, integrate that, and make it a part of who they are. And then they, in turn, will apply constant, gentle pressure to the persons in their surrounding, and it spreads like a ripple, and who knows how far that goes. Now, in the process of doing that, there are also some important concepts that I would like to share with you. And the first concept is something called the flashlight of awareness. Your awareness is like a flashlight. Think about it. What is a flashlight? In India, I grew up calling it a torch. What does a torch do? That's simple. A torch lights up whatever you shine it on. Shine it on the floor, it lights up the floor. Shine it on the ceiling, it illuminates the ceiling. Your awareness is like a flashlight. And to demonstrate this, I would now ask you to shine the flashlight of your awareness on the seat in which you are sitting, on the chair in which you're sitting. The moment I do that, you become aware of the pressure of your buttocks on the seat of the chair. You feel the fabric or the leather pressing against the back of your thighs. 30 seconds ago, you were not aware of any of that, but now you are. Why is that? That's because you shone the flashlight of awareness on them. Now, consider your life. Where do you shine the flashlight of your awareness? You shine the flashlight of your awareness on the 2, 3, or 4 things that you think are wrong in your lives, on the problems in your life. And because you shine the flashlight of your awareness on them, they get illuminated and they capture all of your attention and emotional energy. And what about the 30, 40, 50, 200 things which are pretty good about your life? You know, the fact that you have food to eat, you have a bed to sleep in, a roof over your head. You never shine the flashlight of your awareness on them, so they pass by unnoticed in the background. This is a huge mistake. Consciously, deliberately shine the flashlight of your awareness on the many ways in which you are truly blessed and fortunate. Persist until you have that feeling of gratitude inside you, and I strongly recommend doing this just before you go to bed at night. When you get up in the morning, don't go immediately to the space of, oh my God, there's so much to do and I don't have enough time to do it all. Shine the flashlight of your awareness on the many ways in which you're blessed. And as you go through the day, pause and shine the flashlight of your awareness on the many wonderful things in your life. And I hope that you eventually get to the point where the default emotional domain you occupy is one of appreciation and gratitude. And the reason for that is when you're in the default emotional domain of appreciation and gratitude, you're not angry, you're not nervous, you're not fearful, you're not anxious. The two cannot coexist. So remember, anytime you're frazzled, see that what you're doing is shining the flashlight of awareness on your problem. And it might not even really be a problem. It's that you have defined it as a problem. Now, here's another extremely powerful exercise. Understand that when an event happens, any event, it does not cause suffering. Suffering only begins when you label that event, this is bad, this is terrible. If you're a coach, you lose your biggest client. Okay, you now have a lot of spare time. But you say, oh my God, I lost my biggest client. What's going to happen to my cash flow? I have my children's college tuition to pay. This is terrible. And the moment you say this is terrible, at that instant, suffering begins. Suffering doesn't begin when an event occurs. Suffering begins when you label that event, this is bad, this is terrible, I cannot bear it. There's a wonderful Sufi tale. It talks about a man and his son, and they lived in a beautiful valley, and they were very happy, but they were dirt poor. And the man decided he was sick and tired of being dirt poor and was going to become rich. And the way he was going to do that was by breeding horses. He bought a stallion, didn't have enough money to buy a stallion, so he borrowed from the neighbors. And the very day he got the stallion, it kicked the top bar loose from the paddock where he housed it and ran away. And the neighbors said, you thought you were going to become a rich man, but your stallion has run away. You are in a deep soup. And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? That stallion fell in with a group of wild horses who were close to where the man lived, and he was able to entice them into his paddock, which he had repaired, so escape was no longer possible. And all of a sudden, he had his stallion back, plus a dozen wild horses, and by the standards of that village, that made him a wealthy man. And the neighbors came around saying, we thought you were destitute, but fortune has smiled upon you. How lucky you are. And he shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? The man and his son started to break the horses so they could sell them at the market, and one of the horses threw the man's son and stomped on his leg, and it broke and it healed crooked. And the neighbors came around and said, he was such a fine young lad, and now he'll never be able to get married. How terrible. And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? That summer, the king of the country declared war on a neighboring country, and press gangs moved through the villages, rounding up all the able-bodied young men to serve in the army. But this man's son was spared because he had a crooked leg. And the neighbors had tears in their eyes as they rolled around. We don't know if we'll ever see our sons alive again, but you still have your son with you. How lucky you are. And he shrugged his shoulder and said, good thing, bad thing, who knows? And it went on like that forever. But the lesson in this is, and I want you to think about it, can you recall any instance in your life where something happened that at the time it happened, you thought, this is terrible? But now, with the passage of time and perhaps greater wisdom, you can look back and say, that wasn't so terrible after all, or maybe even that was good. Virtually everybody can remember some such instance. I remember I was speaking before the Global Executive Summit of the Entrepreneurs Organization. One of the persons back there raised his hand and insisted on being recognized. And he said, Professor Rao, I have a perfect story for you. He was a graduate of one of the IITs, did his master's in Stanford, got a job with a high-tech company. All his friends got jobs with other companies. They were looking forward to building their careers, but he had an immigration problem, as a result of which he was forced to leave the country. And he had student debt, and when you have student debt in dollars and you're earning in rupees, you're not in a very happy place. But he said, I thought my career was over and I was ruined, but as a result of my having to leave the country, I started this company with two of my engineering school buddies, and it's going gangbusters. I met this beautiful lady who's now my wife. All my clients are in America. I go there at least 6 times a year and I have a picture-perfect life, and none of this would have happened if I had not been forced to leave the country. So simply asking yourself that question, this thing that I'm about to label bad, is there any conceivable way in which X years from now it could turn out to be good, will move you to a different emotional domain. And if you then ask yourself the next question, is there anything that I can do to actually make this a wonderful event? And you find that you have moved seamlessly from the realm of despair to the realm of possibility. This is a wonderful thing, not only for you to absorb, but also to communicate to your coaching clients. It is the cornerstone of resilience. In fact, I'm not a big fan of resilience. I advocate extreme resilience. And extreme resilience is where you bounce back so quickly from adversity that an external person observing you might not even know that you had suffered an adverse event. And how do you do that? You do that by not labeling adversity as adversity. This is bad, this is terrible. Instead, just label it as this happened. And having labeled it this happened, then say, what do I do now? What possible scenario can I envisage by which in X years this could turn out to be fantastic? And then go the next step. What can I do to actually make this fantastic? And as I said before, this is how you move seamlessly from the realm of despair to the realm of possibility. There is another thing that many of us do, and again, this is very deleterious to our health and well-being. We live our lives in the following manner. I set a goal for myself. I tried very hard to meet the goal. I succeeded. Life is a blast. Or I set a goal for myself and I tried very hard to achieve it. I failed. Life sucks. We live our lives oscillating on a sinusoidal curve between elation and despair, and we spend altogether too much time at the despair end of the spectrum. It's a lousy way to live. There is a better way. Set a goal for yourself. By all means, set an ambitious goal, but having set the goal, forget about it. That's right, forget about the goal. Don't give thought to it. The benefit of setting a goal is that it establishes direction. Once the direction has been established, don't give any thought to it. Instead, pour all of your emotional energy into what are the activities that I have to undertake in order to meet my goal, and pour all your emotional energy into that. When you do that, you discover two things. Number one, you actually start to enjoy the journey, and the journey is the only thing you have. The goal, the destination is a mirage. You get there, you tarry a few minutes, and then you're off somewhere else. People talk in terms of, I want to climb Mount Everest. Have you ever thought about how much time you spend on top of Mount Everest? A few minutes to a half hour max. You get up there, your buddy takes a picture of you, your buddy gets up there, you take a picture of him, and then you're on your way down, and you hope you don't get killed in an avalanche. So if you're going to climb Mount Everest, you better enjoy the days and weeks and months of acclimatization on base camp 1, base camp 2, and so on. It works the same way in life. Whether or not you reach the destination, whether or not you achieve your goal is totally beyond your control. Any number of things, totally unforeseen things, can come at you. They can come from left field and they will derail you. It is not under your control. So pour all of your emotional activities into the energy, into the activities that you are. In other words, invest in the process, do not invest in the outcome. The mistake that most of us make is we think the benefit of setting a goal and trying our level best to achieve the goal is achieving the goal. Wrong. The benefit of setting a goal and trying our level best to achieve the goal is the learning and growth that happen in us and to us as we try our level best to achieve the goal. If we actually achieve the goal, that is a bonus. Be grateful, be immensely grateful. If you don't achieve the goal, despite the fact that you tried your level best to achieve the goal, then the learning and growth have already happened. So be grateful, be immensely grateful. It is a no-lose proposition. If any of you are sports fans, and particularly if you're a basketball fan, you will know about John Wooden. John Wooden was one of the winningest coaches in sports history, in any sports, and he led UCLA to an unprecedented number of victories in the NCAA. And he used to talk about, whenever I worked with a team, I never spoke about winning or outscoring opponents. I always talked about, when it is over and you look in the mirror, did you do the best you were capable of? If you did the best you were capable of, then the score really doesn't matter. But if you did the best you were capable of, I fancy you will find the score to your liking. That is a perfect articulation of invest in the process, do not invest in the outcome. The outcome is beyond your control. You have the illusion of control and you think that I can make the outcome happen. If I execute better, if I work harder, if I manage my time better, then I will be able to. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But pinning your well-being on the outcome is a very foolish thing to do, because that is what gets you in an oscillating frame between elation and despair. You do not want to live there. When you invest in the process, you find that every day is a blast. I'm going to give you right now a strategy for having a terrific day every day. And this may surprise you. It's really quite easy to have a terrific day every day. Here's what you have to do. Get up in the morning, and after you have shown the flashlight of awareness on the many good things in your life, Consciously determine that you are going to have a fantastic day. Let me repeat that. Consciously decide that you're going to have a fantastic day. It's that simple. Because here is the mistake most of us make. We think that in order for us to have a fantastic day, stuff should happen that we want to have happen, and stuff should not happen that we don't want to have happen. And neither of those is in our control. But neither of those has anything to do with whether or not we have a fantastic day. So if you're smart, and I have a suspicion that the collective IQ of the persons on this call are off the charts. So if you're smart, what you'll do is say, I know that feces is going to fall from the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plan for it in advance. I'm going to have a perfect day. And in my perfect day, feces is going to fall from the sky. So I'm going to spend a couple of hours of my perfect day cleaning up the feces that will inevitably fall from the sky. And I will have a wonderful time while I'm doing that. And if you do, you will find that it really is possible for you to have a perfect day every day. It sounds simplistic, but please don't dismiss it. Actually try it. You can determine you have a perfect day, and in your perfect day, things don't go the way in which you would like them to go, and you just recognize that this is the nature of the universe, and your job is to accept it. And accepting it doesn't mean that you don't do anything about it, you don't try to change it. You certainly try to change it, and you try your level best with every means at your disposal to change it to the way in which you would like it to be. But you change it to, or attempt to change it to the way you would like it to be, because that is your path. That is your path of growth. You do not make your well-being dependent on whether or not you succeed in making it conform to the way you would like it to. If it succeeds, fantastic. If it doesn't succeed, fantastic. Once again, we go back to invest in the process, not in the outcome. I'm with you, Raj.
Thank you. That was a perfect sum up, Dr. Rao, and I'm going to use your example to segue and request probably the only person on this conference who's actually climbed Mount Everest like you did to share a little bit with us about her experience. Aparnaji, if I may invite you to share your first-hand experience.
Greetings to one and all, and Dr. Rao, it was a really very enlightening and very an incredible session with you. I noted down a lot of points, and I'm going to inculcate these things in my life and also while climbing mountains. Thank you so much. We are living
My pleasure. Thank you, Aparna.
We are living in extraordinary and unusual times. The past 1.5 years have been extremely difficult, strange, and tough, and we all have our own coping mechanisms. Life is like a mountain. You go up, reach the top, come back down, set new goals, and start the climb all over again. The mountains we climb are not only made of rocks, ice, and snow, but also of dreams and desires. Where there is a will, there is a way can be translated as, if there is a way, I'll find one. If there is no way, I'll make one or create one. There's always a way if we are committed and passionate. There are 3 basic rules of mountaineering. It is always further than it looks. It is always taller than it looks. It is always harder than it looks. This is life in a nutshell. Life is hard, life is tough, life is not fair, and you're not entitled to anything. You will not be rewarded for your goodness, or will you be doomed forever. Life does not work that way. Mountains are not fair or unfair, they are just dangerous. One has to constantly train and train, be focused, consistent to be a good and efficient climber. This applies to all spheres of our lives. Mountaineering is a true test of one's limits, ability to endure adversities, dangers, and extreme conditions. Reaching the top of a mountain is an incredible physical, mental, and emotional accomplishment. Mountaineering involves training, planning, teamwork, skill, discipline, hard work, commitment, prudence, courage to take risks, etc., which can easily be applied to our personal and professional lives. I started off with nothing from scratch, with no background in mountaineering or climbing whatsoever, and also very late in my life. I could have failed miserably, but I took the risk and began my journey with one step at a time. I saw the glorious snow-capped Himalayas for the first time in 2002 when I cleared civil services exam and was allotted the Indian Police Service and went to Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy for Administration, Mussoorie for the foundation course. Hailing from Karnataka, I was awestruck by the mesmerizing views of the Himalayan mountain ranges, which left a deep fascination for snow-capped mountains and peaks. Then my journey as a police officer started in Uttar Pradesh. I'm an Uttar Pradesh cadre officer. And after almost 12 years, my close relationship with the mountains began in 2014 when I was posted as commandant of 9th Battalion PAC, an armed battalion in Muradabad, Uttar Pradesh. 9th Battalion PAC was previously known as Special Police Force or the SPF, which has had a glorious history of high altitude mountaineering. It manned sensitive high altitude security posts along the Indo-Tibetan border. Now it is the China-occupied Tibetan border. And later these security posts were handed over to the Indo-Tibetan border police, where I am right now working in Tehran. The fascination for mountains and curiosity towards mountaineering equipments, gear, tentage kept at the battalion triggered me to go and do a basic mountaineering course at Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of Mountaineering and Allied Sports in Manali in October 2013. We were a batch of around 130 students, and the age of the students ranged between 18 years to around 24, 25 years. And I was one of the oldest persons, and almost I was in my late 30s. And my husband, before I went for the mountaineering basic course, my husband just told me, just be careful, you're an IPS officer. Try to complete the mountaineering course. If you don't complete, see, people will have an opinion because you are an IPS officer. They keep looking up to you. Having that in my mind, I went and did the course, and I was quite diligent, sincere, and took one day at a time. I did not think about exams. Kya ho gaya? Sorry, I think there was a glitch. So I got an A grade, which made me eligible to do the advanced mountaineering course. So I went again the same institute in July 2014. I completed my advanced mountaineering course and thereby began my journey of climbing the 7 highest peaks of the 7 continents and a dream of skiing to the geographic South Pole and the geographic North Pole. I skied to the geographic South Pole in January 2019. And I was supposed to go and ski the North Pole into 2020. Because of COVID and because of travel restrictions, I was unable to go. This year again, because of COVID and travel restrictions, I was unable to travel to Norway and complete the North Pole expedition. This year again, I was part of a Central Armed Police Forces expedition to Mount Everest and Mount Lhotse in Nepal. I reached Kathmandu in the first week of April and reached base camp of Mount Everest. And during my rotations, there are 2-3 rotations, and then because of high altitude, you need to do a lot of rotations and acclimatize your body, and then you reach the summit. During my rotations, I reached Camp 2, which is at a height of almost around 22,000 feet. During my summit push in the end of May, I reached Camp 2, but I realized my health was deteriorating. My nose was bleeding. I was coughing blood. So I had to make a decision, either to go up and risk my life or to abort the expedition. So I took this decision that no, I will abandon the climb and get back and save my life. So from Camp 2, which is around 22,000 feet, I requested for a heli rescue. I flew down to Kathmandu immediately, which saved my life because I was diagnosed with mild high altitude pulmonary edema, pneumonia, and COVID. I was COVID positive also. So this was in June, first week. And I spent almost a month to recover from the illness. And in this year, July first week, I joined back work in Dehradun. And then gradually, like, I was completely devastated and disappointed because I could not complete the expedition. But life goes on, life goes on. I have to come back to my family. I have to come back to work. So I came back and I'm now gradually getting back to my original training regime, my fitness regime. It is an upheaval. It's a big, huge task, but I'm still trying, and I'm sure I'll get back to my original fitness. Also, let me tell you about my experience of climbing the Mount Everest. I went to climb Mount Everest in 2015. From the China side, I did not go from the Nepal side because I wanted to visit Tibet and see Lhasa and the Patola Palace where Dalai Lama lived. So I went from China. If you remember, in 2015, there was a huge devastating earthquake in Nepal. When the earthquake occurred, I was at around 21,000 feet at the advanced base camp, and we had to be immediately evacuated from the base camp. And whatever I could collect, some eatables or drinking water, and the whole night after the earthquake, we had to travel back to the base camp. I was completely disappointed that the mountains have become really dangerous to climb, and I have to go back to India. Again, I came back, I was disappointed, and then I started again training. In 2016, I went to climb Mount Everest, and this year, 2016, I was lucky enough, and as Dr. Rao says, you have to be grateful and humble enough to accept God's will. So I was grateful and thankful to God that I summited the mountain in 2016. Let me tell you one incident. A lot of people ask me, how does it feel when you reach the top of the world? You must have had a magnificent experience. Frankly speaking, when I reached the top of the world, the only thing in my mind was, the only thing that was a worrying fact was, I was completely exhausted. I had run out of food. I had run out of all my water. When I reached the summit, I requested one of the kind climbers who had summited for a sip of water. I took that sip of water. I borrowed some dry fruits from my Sherpa. And when you push for the summit, you are trekking, you're climbing in the night. So there is a torch on your forehead, and you're just looking at your foot and keeping one foot ahead of another. You don't look around and you don't know what your surroundings are. It's only in daylight that you see how high you are, or what are the deep gorges, and what a great fall it would be if you do one mistake and if you had a fall. It would be fatal. I would never come back alive. So the only worrying fact was, how will I get down without injuring myself or without falling off the steep cliffs or gorges and the steep traverses and steep rock falls. That was the main worry, and also again, I was exhausted completely. And when you're coming down, there are a lot of dead bodies. The famous, there are a lot of dead bodies. It really mentally affects you. You go into this kind of depressive mood where you feel as though maybe if I also die, I'll be one of them. So you have to have all this pain, the exhaustion, the cold, the extreme weather conditions, the wind, all that. But you need to focus on putting one really क्या हो रहा है? Sorry again, I was disconnected. So that I was focusing on just moving forward and focusing on reaching down safely. It was only when I reached the summit camp, and that is Camp 3. And then when I reached advanced base camp and rested the night, the next day did I realize the magnitude of what I had really done. I had climbed to the top of the world and I was safe and I will be going back to my family. This is what my feeling was. After Mount Everest, one of the biggest challenge for me was to climb Mount Denali. Mount Denali is in Alaska, and in 2017, it is one of the toughest mountains because it is in the Arctic area. It is a cold mountain, and it is extreme weather conditions. And it's extremely cold, and walking in the glaciers. And Alaska was a big revelation to me. The first time I went to Alaska was in 2017. I reached summit camp, but I was stuck at the summit camp for more than 7 days. And the weather was so bad, I couldn't even see the mountain, and we were running out of food. One of my teammates got frostbite, so we had to again decide to come down because we were not going to summit in the near future. So we had to take a decision and come down for our own safety. I was again very disappointed, but again I came back, got into the routine of training and getting back to work, taking care of my children, and so on and so forth. 2018, again, I went to Alaska, all the way to Alaska, thinking that maybe I may be successful this time. Again, this time it was even more disappointing because I couldn't even go to summit camp. I was stuck at 14,200 camp for more than 8 days, and the weather was getting bad. And again, we had run out of our time to climb the mountain. Again, I had to abandon the climb. It was only in 2019, again, when I went back. This time it was the most beautiful climb, and I climbed the mountain. Normally you climb the mountain in 22 or 24 days. I climbed the mountain in just 10 days, and my teammates, my guide, Sebastian, and a young 21-year-old university student from Colorado, Corey Schmidt. He was very, very young and very, very enthusiastic. He set the pace. Initially, I could not keep up with the pace, but then they were so patient and they were so helpful that I could keep up with their pace, and we climbed the mountain in just 10 days and came back to Talkeetna, and we partied in Anchorage. So that is a wonderful experience that I had. I did not give up. I went in 2017, I went in 2018, and finally I could do it in 2019. See, your success is driven by your mindset. If you can believe it, the mind can achieve it. I also always stress this fact that we are as young as we feel. Age should not limit our potential or be a handicap. It has become very fashionable nowadays to say that age is just a number. Let's be very, very realistic. To achieve something, we have to come out of our comfort zones, be committed, be disciplined, and put in that extra effort. Age should not be just another crutch that we use as an excuse to not do something. Also, failing is not a crime. Lack of effort is. We need to unlearn a lot of myths. To be successful, we have to train ourselves to handle failures, crisis, and pain. Hope when everything looks bleak. Have faith. Be optimistic about the future. Power through the hard times. Put troubles into proper perspective. It is very crucial to understand the significance of life and that it is a blessing and a gift, like Dr. Rao says. It is denied to a lot of other people. We are privileged to be able to live every day. Wake up to another day of hope and blessing. I always ask these questions to myself. What stops me from doing what I want to do? What self-talk am I doing consciously or subconsciously? What are my self-limiting thoughts? What are the barriers that I have created around myself? So we have to break these barriers and shatter these self-limiting beliefs. If we believe in ourselves and have faith in our capabilities, we can beat self-doubt and dauntlessly chase our goals. I personally abide by a few principles, like developing and sticking to a set routine gives me a sense of structure, purpose, and progress. We have to deal with change and uncertainties. They are a part of life and we cannot avoid them. So adapt to the situation, accept the situation, and overcome it with a pragmatic approach, confidence, and calmness. Exploring, traveling, adventure has taught me that how little I need in life and just how much we have to be grateful for and thankful for. There is opportunity in absolutely everything. Taking it one day at a time is very important for me. Not focusing on the end, but focusing on today, focusing on tomorrow, and not much further is what I rely on. We have to handle crises, failures, uncertainties with willpower and way power, have a goal, have the commitment, the discipline, and the hope and the spirit to achieve our goals and move forward and not look back and have regrets. Most of us at some point of time, we have been miserable, we have been damaged, we have been broken, we have been destroyed. But what we need to have is the spirit, the strength, the hope to make this life that is a blessing a beautiful work of art. What is most crucial is to change the default, to try, to fail, to fall, and not be embarrassed about it, to get up every time we fall, to continue, to move forward, and to never ever give up, no matter what. This is what I believe in, and this has helped me in all my mountaineering experiences, and also the lessons that I've learned from my failures have also helped me in my profession as a police officer also. And for me, it's a constant endeavor to improve myself and to be the best version of myself. So I wish everyone who are participating in this session the very best and immense success in all your endeavors. Be strong, stay safe, and take care of yourselves. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much, Aparna. That was fascinating, inspirational, and so much in line with, you almost echoed and exemplified every point that Dr. Rao had made. It was a joy listening to you. I know we have some questions coming through, but we're probably out of time. So in the interests of the audience and both of your respect to your time, just a quick summary of some of the things that echoed, right? You started off, and Dr. Rao told us, don't label events. It is what it is. And you talked about mountains not being anything but mountains. They're not fair or kind. You just take them as they are. You talked about committing to the process, how you break down, single steps at a time to that huge goal that you had, and how you worked your way through. Fantastic way in dealing with. Dr. Rao said, don't try and solve your internal problems with external issues, and you've taken accountability in everything that you've done and achieved in your life. It came out so clearly, and the gratitude and appreciation you kept talking about, which was fantastic. It exactly like he was mentioning, and shining the torchlight really on the possibility and what can be. So thank you so much, Aparna. It's been a real pleasure and an inspiration speaking and listening to you. On your behalf, if there are some questions that we can send to you offline from the audience, maybe we can direct them to you and get your responses at a later time.
Sure, anytime. I'll be available. Thanks a lot for inviting me for this session. And
yeah,
it's been a
and I want to take a quick minute to thank the audience as well. Again, our session sponsors for today, Regal. It's a wonderful session, one of the highlights of the last 2 days here. So thank you again. Thank you, audience, for all your time. I think Dr. Rao had to step out for another engagement, but on all your behalves, we'll convey our thanks. Thank you so much.